I would like to share with you a few articles dealing with this pagan holiday called Christmas. Now, I do not want to sound judgmental. There are many who are observing Christmas, many Christians, Seventh-day Adventists as well, observing Christmas out of ignorance. So my purpose of sharing this is not to be judgmental. Now, on the other side of this, there are some Adventists who are using Ellen White to justify the reason why they celebrate Christmas. Now, nowhere within the writing of Sister White where she gives this advice where one should have like a Christmas tree inside of the home and to deck it with gold, to decorate it like the pagans do. Now, I do not celebrate Christmas. I do not observe this holiday, nor do I counsel anyone to have a Christmas tree in their home or even in their church. Now, the Bible also counsels us to do good to anyone at any time. This is a time of the year we can also use to do good. Notice carefully what the Bible says. In Romans 12:9, let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. As the Bible counsels us, as much as it depends on us, as much as it is in our power, we must strive to do good to everyone, to every man. And we can use this opportunity as the world is celebrating this pagan holiday to do good, to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with them, to pass out some great controversy. As many are giving gifts, we can give them the gift of the Great Controversy book. Notice carefully with me. I'm going to quote a passage here from Ellen White dealing with Christmas. Notice in what context she wrote about Christmas. It's not about celebrating it. It's not about deck some trees with ornaments or ornamental items that the pagans do, that people do, but it had a different meaning. But also keep in mind, she also says that time and place should be considered. Notice carefully with me what this says here. This is from Review and Herald, December 26, 1882. While urging upon all the duty of first bringing their offerings to God, I would not wholly condemn the practice of making Christmas and New Year's gifts to our friends. Notice carefully, to our friends. Now, context. What kind of gift that she is referring to? This is what we want to look at here. Because as I mentioned, many are using her writings to justify the celebration of Christmas, but they are not reading the counsel carefully. Notice, it is right to bestow upon one another tokens of, what is it again? Love, as we just read a moment ago from the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 9. Let love be without dissimulation. You see the context there. Notice, again she goes on to say, it is right to bestow upon one another tokens of love and remembrance if we do not in this forget God, our best friend. Notice carefully now. We should make our gifts such as will prove a real benefit to the receiver. Notice, I would recommend such books as will be an aid in understanding the Word of God, or that will increase our, again, love for its precepts. So what was the counsel? The counsel was to use this season to spread the love of Jesus to one another. What kind of gifts she advised there to give? Books, something that would help us to grow spiritually, something that would help us to understand the love of God for one another. This is why the Bible tells us, as the world is celebrating this pagan holiday, we want to again look at, is it biblical for Christians, especially Seventh-day Adventists, to celebrate Christmas? Notice what the Bible tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. Prove all things, and what else? Hold fast that which is, again, good. we want to prove all things and to hold fast to that which is good. Now, the Bible counsels us in 2 Corinthians chapter 6 that we should not mingle the things of Baal, the things of darkness, with God and with light, because the two cannot go together. As the Bible also says, can two walk together unless that they agree? Now, question we want to ask, is Christmas a pagan holiday? Yes or no? Does it have its background from paganism? If it does has its background from paganism, that means it also promotes the sun, S-U-N, God. It also promotes sun, S-U-N, worship. Notice carefully with me on the screen what this article says. Is Christmas a pagan holiday? Notice this is from the world now. They are about to educate us about Christmas. Notice, people have for thousands of years celebrated astronomical markers that help them regulate things in their lives, like agriculture. The solstices and equinoxes help people know when to plant their seeds and they harvest their crops. The winter solstice marks the day with the shortest period of daylight and the longest night. To quote who? The pagan faith called Doctor Who, in which a character named Kazwan Sardik says, notice it goes on to say, on every world, wherever people are, in the deepest part of the winter, at the exact midpoint, everybody stops and turns and hugs, as if to say, well done. Well done, everyone. We're halfway out of the dark, back on earth. We call this what? Christmas, or the winter solstice. On this world, the first settlers called it the Crystal Feast. In other words, what this article just told us here is that the pagans notice that around December 25th, as we know in the fall season, the days start getting shorter and shorter, less sunlight. And the pagans worship the sun, S-U-N. So some of the pagans even thought that the sun, quote unquote, sun god was or angry with them. And that's the reason why they were getting less sunlight. But they also noticed around December 24th, 25th, that they started to get a little bit more sunlight. And so they started to celebrate this as the rebirth of the S-U-N, sun. Notice, article goes on to say, for the ancient Romans, that holiday, called Christmas, was called Saturnalia, named for the who? The god Saturn. Saturnalia was celebrated by feasts. And what else? The giving of gifts. When? 274 AD, the Emperor Aurelian consecrated the Temple of Sol in Vectus, creating a holiday called Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of who again? The S-U-N, officially elevating the S-U-N, sun, to the highest position among the gods, nudging a steering current towards monotheism. There it is. The world is educating us and giving us a history of where this holiday comes from. Again, this is a celebration of the sun, S-U-N, God. And that promotes sun worship or Sunday worship. Celebrating Christmas has a lot to do with the mark of the beast as well. It's conditioning you to worship the sun on the first day of the week. Notice, goes on to say, around 350 AD, Pope Julius I officially declared December 25th to mark the birth of Christ. There was no evidence that was the actual day of birth. To the contrary, notice, the Gospel of who? Luke says, and there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. Shepherds watch their flock by night during lambing season, which is the spring. You see how the world is trying to help us to see here. Christmas has nothing to do with the birth of Jesus Christ. Again, as a matter of fact, if you look at the account in the book of Luke, chapter 2, which describes the birth of Christ and the event that took place, and then also we are told that when Christ was born, shepherds were in the field keeping watch. They will not be in the field in December in winter because it's very cold there around this time of the year. Christ was likely born in the spring or the fall season, early fall season, not winter season. Notice carefully with me. Now, remember again what the headline was from Forbes magazine. Is Christmas a pagan holiday? And they just give us a little bit of history here showing where Christmas originated. It was the Roman Catholic Church that brought this pagan holiday into Christianity. Now, the same headline we see here, is Christmas a pagan holiday? We're going to find that same headline from the Seventh-day Adventist General Conference website. Now, this is going to be a twist now. The world says it's pagan, but the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists is going to tell us, asking the same question, is Christmas a pagan holiday? They're going to say, no, it's biblical. The General Conference is going to say that. Notice carefully. It says here, from Adventist News Network, is Christmas pagan? Christmas pagan sub, Pastor Emmanuel Millen busts some myths about the most wonderful time of the year. In other words, everything that we just read from Forbes magazine is a myth, and we'll read some more in a moment. This pastor here and the General Conference promoting this article saying it's a myth, it's not pagan. Notice, in the mid-19th century, a Protestant minister, Alexander Hislop, wrote a book called The Two Babylons. Notice carefully, in which he compared the Roman Catholic Church to ancient Babylon. Let's pause. What he's about to do here, if you read this carefully, what he's about to do here, remember the headline was, is Christmas pagan? He's going to defend that Christmas is not pagan, Christmas is biblical, but not only that, he's going to defend the Pope of Rome against the book, this book called The Two Babylon. What he's going to show here is that this person who wrote this book, The Two Babylon, not only is wrong about the Pope, the Antichrist, but wrong about Christmas being pagan. Notice, again, in the mid-19th century, who again? A Protestant minister by the name of Alexander Hislop wrote a book called The Two Babylons, in which he compared the Roman Catholic Church to ancient Babylon. In his zeal, the Protestant minister's zeal, to prove such a connection, he jumped over, notice carefully the words, a few facts on several occasions. In other words, this Seventh-day Adventist pastor here and the General Conference promoting this article, he's saying that this Protestant minister was wrong on the facts, trying to show that the papacy is Babylon, is Antichrist. Then he says, the idea of Christmas being pagan, notice, was one such leap. What does that mean? When he says the expression was one such leap, meaning fable. That's what he's saying here. That means not only Christmas is not pagan according to the General Conference here, but also the Pope, the papacy is not Babylon. The Pope of Rome is not the Antichrist. Notice, Protestant preachers since have perpetuated several what? Myths that need to be examined. So all of us who are proclaiming the third angel's message and saying Babylon is fallen as well and come out of her, and that chapter 17 of the Revelation, when it talks about Babylon, that woman riding the beast, it's not the papacy. that has made everyone, all the nations drunk of the wine of a fornication. And what is one of the wine? What is one of that? That is the teaching, but that is also Christmas, what they call Christmas. Notice, the article goes on to say, the name, notice what he says, Christmas, comes from the Latin words for Christ. What? Comes from the Latin word for Christ and sent. It reminds us of Jesus. Notice carefully this blasphemy. It reminds us of Jesus' prayer to the Father. As you sent me into the world, I also have sent them, the disciples, into the world. John 17:18. Christmas is, therefore, he says, a very fitting term because, why? This is what is celebrated. Christ sent as a human on a mission to save us, and his sending of us to spread it to the world. That is once again blasphemy. And here is the reason why this is blasphemy. Here's what the Catholic Church says when it comes to the Mass. It says the Mass is the unbloody renewal of the sacrifice of Christ on Calvary's cross. Christ, through the ministry of the Roman Catholic priests, offers himself to God in an unbloody manner under the appearances of bread and wine. The Mass is the same sacrifice as the sacrifice of the cross, because notice, the victim is what? Is the same. The purpose of the Mass is, among other things, to satisfy the justice of God for the sins committed against him. Notice, let's continue to read. When the priest pronounces the tremendous words of consecration, he reaches up into the heavens and brings Christ down from his throne and places him upon where? The Roman Catholic altar, to be offered up again as the victim for the sins of men. Christ became what? Incarnate a single time. The priest brings Christ down from heaven and renders him present on the Roman Catholic altar as the eternal victim for the sins of men, not once, but 1,000 times. The priest speaks, and lo, Christ, the eternal omnipotent God, bows his head in humble obedience to whom? To the priest's command. No wonder that the name which spiritual writers are specially fond of applying to the priest is that of altar Christus. For the priest is and should be a what? Another Christ. Yet this Adventist pastor tells us here once again, or the General Conference tells us here, the name Christmas comes from the Latin words for what? Christ and sent. It reminds us of Jesus' prayer to the Father. They went on to say, skip on down, Christmas is therefore a very fitting term because this is what is celebrated. Christ sent as a human on a mission to save us, and his sending of us to spread it to the world. And as we've been looking at, they have been indoctrinated, the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, been made drunk by the wine of the papacy, to say that, to use this interpretation that Christmas means Christ sent, to use that interpretation is really to promote the teachings of Roman Catholicism, which their Mass, again, Christmas, really mean the killing of Jesus Christ over and over and over again. This is a pagan ritual. It is a pagan holiday, Christmas, that is. Let's look at some pagan tradition where this comes from, the licentiousness that comes with this celebration. Notice, from Bret Bart, December 25th, 2019, it's Christmas. So, a British newspaper is doing what? Is encouraging wives to cheat on their husbands again. Christmas is a time for, what's the word? Tradition. Bringing a tree into the house. What else? Midnight Mass. Giving gifts and being repeatedly, notice, encouraged to do what? To cheat on your husband. That is exactly how the pagan use that celebration, this occasion all kinds of orgies and licentiousness. Notice with me, go to the book of 2 Kings chapter 23. 2 Kings chapter 23, and let's begin in verse 5. 2 Kings chapter 23. Notice what the Bible tells us here in 2 Kings chapter 23. This is a pagan holiday, and keep in mind what Jeremiah said as well about going to the woods and pick up a tree and decorate it, bring it home, decorated it, and to worship it. Notice carefully with me. 2 Kings chapter 23. Let's begin in verse 4. 2 Kings 23 verse 4. And the king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal and for the grove. That's licentiousness. That's sexual immorality. That's the LGBT in those days. And for all the hosts of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. And he put down the idolatrous priests, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem. Them also that burn incense unto Baal, to whom again? To the sun, S-U-N, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the hosts of heaven. And he brought out the grove from the house of the Lord without Jerusalem unto the brook Kidron, and burnt it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it small to powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people. Verse 7. And he brake down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of the Lord, where the women rove hangings for the grove. And that is exactly what happened, how the pagans celebrate this time of the year. The grove, all kinds of licentiousness. And again, notice this video again from not a person of our faith, that also explains, even the Protestants are acknowledging this is a pagan holiday, yet they celebrate it. Notice.
You see, the winter solstice a couple of days later was the shortest day of the year, and the pagans had something called Saturnalia. And it was a time of lawlessness because all the laws were suspended. And people, a bunch of singers who actually wandered the streets naked singing. And then they had orgies, sexual orgies. And then they had orgies, sexual orgies.
What did he say there again? Orgies. It's the same thing that we just read in 2 Kings chapter 23. The practices of the pagans. Again, notice, back to the screen. From Breitbart, December 24th, 2019. Louisiana town does what? Sprinkle with holy water. For what? For Christmas. This is paganism at its best. Notice, an entire town in Louisiana got a spiritual blessing in time for Christmas. Thanks to gallons of holy water, quote unquote, holy water, and an airplane, we can bless more area in a shorter amount of time, says Reverend, quote unquote, Reverend Matthew Bazar of St. Anne Church in Cow Island, the priest who blessed the water, the practices of the pagans. Now, it was not always so, even here, or I should say, even in United States of America. There was a time when this pagan holiday was banned, especially in the state of Massachusetts. Notice with me what history tells us here. From the History Channel, when Massachusetts banned Christmas, the Puritans of New England eventually followed the lead of those in Old England. And in 1659, the General Court of the Massachusetts Bay Colony made it a, notice, a criminal offense to publicly celebrate the holiday and declare that whosoever shall be found observing any such day as, which day? Christmas or the like, either by forbearing of labor, feasting or any other way was subject to a 5-shilling fine. Now, question for you. Why did they hate or they loathe that holiday, Christmas? Why such measure against celebrating Christmas back then? Notice carefully. It goes on to say, why did the Puritans loathe Christmas? In their strict, what is it? Strict interpretation of the Bible. Pause. That means the reason why they had such strict regulation against Christmas is because the Bible does not say anything about Christmas. It's because of their belief in the Bible. Notice, in their strict interpretation of the Bible, the Puritans noted that there was no scriptural basis for commemorating Christmas. The Puritans tried to run a society in which legislation would not violate anything that the Bible said. And nowhere in the Bible is there a mention of celebrating the Nativity. The Puritans noted that scriptures did not mention a season, let alone a single day that marked the birth of Jesus. Do you know why we were not given a specific day that Jesus was born? Do you know why this was not recorded? It's because Sister White tells us, just like the children of Israel were not supposed to know the place where Moses was buried, so that they would not go and worship him there. Likewise, we were not supposed to know the day that Christ was born. Then why should we celebrate it? Notice what Spirit of Prophecy tells us here. Christmas will soon be here. It is supposed, notice suppose, that Christ was born on the 25th day of December. And for that reason, it is celebrated as his birthday. But notice, it is impossible for us to know upon what day he was born. You can know no more about that than the children of Israel could know when Moses, notice, was buried. What was the reason? The reason God has not revealed that fact is because you would have worshipped that day as they would have worshipped the grave of Moses had they found it. And this is just what they have done with the day they suppose was the one on which Christ was born. And as I mentioned a moment ago, then if we were not supposed to know the day that Christ was born, just like the children of Israel were not supposed to know where Moses' tomb was, because they would worship the tomb, they would worship Moses, and many of us would worship that day, then why should we celebrate this season? It has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. Notice, back to the screen. Even worse for the Puritans were the pagan roots of what? Of Christmas. Not until the 4th century AD did the church in Rome ordain the celebration of the Nativity on when? On December 25th. And that was done by co-opting, notice, existing pagan celebrations such as Saturnalia, an ancient Roman holiday of lights marked with drinking. How? Drinking and feasting that coincided with the winter solstice. Puritans believe Christmas was basically just a pagan custom that the Catholics took over without any biblical basis for it. The holiday had everything to do with the time of year, the solstice, and Saturnalia, and nothing to do with Christianity. We are given reasons here why the Puritans did not want to celebrate Christmas. One of them was because it came from Roman Catholicism, and the Puritans were protesting against the teaching of Rome. And here is another reason, because they knew that that holiday season originated with Satan himself. Have you heard of this impostor called Saint Nick or Saint Nicholas or Santa? If you move the N around, you will have what? You will have Satan. If you put the N At the end of Santa, you have Satan. And notice with me again what this following article is going to tell us, and also what the dictionary is going to tell us about this imposter called Santa. Notice, devil chase children in Czechoslovakia villages, eerie Christmas custom. Masked, what's the word? Devils march through the village, rattling their chains and clanking bells, going door to door to search for badly behaved children. The sinister-looking pre-Christmas tradition in the Czechoslovakia village of Valašská Polenka is actually a celebration of the 4th century who? Saint Nicholas, who appears in costume to soothe the children with sweets. Again, who is that impostor called Saint Nicholas here? Notice what the Wikipedia tells us here. Old Nick or Saint Nicholas from Wikipedia. A nickname for who? For Satan. A nickname for Santa Claus, also known as Old Saint Nick. So who is this impostor that gave us Christmas? It is Satan himself. Notice, next one here from the Collins Dictionary. It tells us Old Nick from the American English means what? The devil, and who else? And Satan. And so when you have Santa going around saying, ho, 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 whatever he says, and then he tells you, Merry Christmas, what do you think he's really telling you? Remember, Santa is the devil, right? What do you think he's really telling you? Notice, you have Merry Christmas. That's what the world, how the world greet each other. Merry Christmas. Well, we know that merry, notice what the word means. The word merry means happy, glad, laughing, joyful. Then you have Christ in Christmas, the Messiah as foretold by the biblical prophets. Then you have Mass. What does it mean? Notice, in the Christian law, the supreme sacrifice is that of the Mass. The supreme act of worship consists essentially in an offering of a worthy victim to God. The offering made by a proper person. Who's that person? It has to be a Roman Catholic priest. And the destruction of the victim. Who is the victim there again that they are trying to destroy? It is none other than Jesus Christ. In other words, those who are promoting Christmas, as the General Conference is promoting Christmas, they're also promoting the crucifying of the Son of God over and over again at the Catholic altar. This is why the book of Hebrews tells us they have crucified to themselves the Son of God afresh. But the Bible tells me that Christ died only once. Again, let's read another counsel here from Spirit of Prophecy. From Review and Herald, December 26, 1882. In every church, notice, however small, special efforts should be made to show our gratitude. What's the word there? Gratitude to God by bringing our offerings for His cause. Notice the word offerings there. Let those who desire a Christmas tree make it, notice, if you desire a Christmas tree, what should you have on it? Make its boughs fruitful with gifts for the what? For the needy. In other words, not deck it with gold and all of these ornamental stuff, expensive stuff, notice, and offerings for the treasury of God. And let the children learn the blessedness of giving by bringing, notice, their little gifts to add to the offerings of their parents. We need to use, as again she says there, this opportunity to do good for others, just like we were told. Notice carefully with me. Just like we were told when they enact the Sunday law, we are not supposed to purposely going out and work on Sunday. We should use that day to do good. We should use that day to evangelize. That does not mean that we should keep that day holy. It is in the same context she talks about Christmas. But yet, in spite of the fact that we were told that if you're going to have a tree, not in your home now, she was talking about some places in the church and not even on the altar. So now, she's saying, if you're going to have a tree, what should you place on that tree? Gifts, money for the poor, things that you can use. Bring offerings so we can help the needy. But notice carefully with me this picture. What do you have here? Behind Elder Ted Wilson, you have this Christmas tree at the headquarters, at the Jesuit headquarters of Seventh-day Adventists. This tree there, decked with a bunch of ornamentals, expensive items. Notice the video.
All three stanzas. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Joy to the earth, the Savior reigns. Let heaven song and go. On fields and farms, from hills and plains, we ring the sounding joy. We ring the sounding joy. We ring the sounding joy.
As you just saw in that video, this is totally going against the council and celebrating this holiday, this pagan holiday, just like the world. Christ is really forgotten when you do things like that. Notice carefully again the council. From Review and Herald, December 11, 1879. The tree may be as tall and its branches as wide as shall best suit the occasion, but notice, let its boughs be laden with what? With the golden and silver fruit of your beneficence. What does that word mean? Beneficence. It means the quality or state of doing or producing something good. We should not decorating this tree as you see here from the General Conference with all of these ornamental stuff. Notice carefully again. But let its boughs be laden with the golden and silver fruit of your beneficence, and present this to him as your Christmas gift. Again, let's close with 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21 and verse 22. We add verse 22 this time. The Bible again says, prove all things. And what else? Hold fast that which is good. And what else? Abstain from all appearance of evil. And Christmas has an appearance of evil, as we just looked at. The pagans used that holiday season, that occasion, that time of the year to worship their gods and to go about in drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, which is licentiousness, in all kinds of orgies. So, brothers and sisters, we need to prove all things. And as we prove all things, we hold fast to that which is good, and we abstain from every appearance of evil. God bless you.